of American crime, few names stir as much fear and fascination as Ted Bundy. A master manipulator and charming sociopath, Bundy's horrifying acts spanned multiple states and left a lasting impact on the nation. Yet, perhaps more bewildering than his brutal crimes were his bold escapes from custody. Not once, but twice. Join us as we explore the incredible true story of how Ted Bundy slipped through the cracks of the justice system, twice. From the tranquil town of Aspen, Colorado, to the harsh wilderness of the Rocky Mountains, and finally to a daring escape in Glenwood Springs that triggered a nationwide manhunt. Stay with us as we delve into the mind of this criminal mastermind and the series of events that shocked the world. Born on November 24, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, Theodore Robert Bundy appeared to have a normal upbringing. However, behind his charming smile and articulate demeanor was a predator who would go on to commit a series of heinous crimes. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy embarked on a killing spree, taking the lives of at least 30 young women across 7 states. His methods were as calculating as they were cruel. He lured his victims with a mix of charm and deceit, often pretending to be injured or impersonating authority figures to gain their trust before abducting them. By the time Ted Bundy's notorious VW Beetle was pulled over by a policeman on August 16, 1975, for acting suspiciously in a residential area in the early hours, he had already murdered multiple women. Inside Bundy's car, the officer discovered a crowbar, handcuffs, a ski mask, and pantyhose with eye holes cut in it. Initially, these items were assumed to be burglary tools, but investigators soon connected Bundy to an attempted kidnapping nearly a year earlier.
I had gotten off work and decided I'd head over to the mall. It was dark and kind of a drizzly night. I came up to a bookstore, and that's when a man approached me. I think he introduced himself as being a police officer, and his name was Officer Roseland. He said, "Is your license plate number?" And he read off my license plate number. I said, "Yes, that's my license plate number." And he said, "We caught someone trying to break into your car."
In November 1974, Bundy had posed as a police officer to gain the trust of 18-year-old Carol Duranch. Once she was in his car, he tried and failed to handcuff her to the vehicle. Duranch escaped and reported the incident to the police. With Bundy now in custody, investigators asked Duranch to identify him in a lineup, which she did. Authorities believed they had sufficient evidence to charge Bundy with her kidnapping. On June 30, 1976, Bundy was found guilty of the assault and sentenced to 1 to 15 years in a Utah state prison. Meanwhile, authorities in Colorado linked Bundy to the murder of 23-year-old Karen Campbell, whose body was found near a dirt road by a Colorado ski resort in early 1975. Bundy was charged with her murder and transferred from Utah to the Garfield County Jail in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, to await trial. Bundy, a former law student, chose to represent himself in court. The judge overseeing his trial excused Bundy from wearing handcuffs and leg shackles and allowed him to visit the courthouse law library to research his case. These privileges would later be criticized as Bundy exploited them for his first escape. On June 7, 1977, during a break from a preliminary hearing, Bundy noticed an open window in the library and seized the opportunity. In a phone call with prison psychologist Dr. Al Carlisle, he later described the moment. "The guard went outside for a smoke, the windows are open, and the fresh air is blowing through. And the sky was blue, and I said, 'I'm ready to go,' and walked to the window and jumped out. Honest to God, I just got sick and tired of being locked up." Jumping 30 feet, Bundy hit the ground hard, spraining his ankle. With no plan, no backup, and no money, Bundy shed a layer of clothing and limped towards nearby Aspen Mountain. Authorities realized he had escaped about 10 minutes later, setting up roadblocks across town and alerting citizens. Bundy hiked up the mountain, broke into a hunting cabin, stole supplies and a rifle, and continued on. Lost and disoriented, he wandered the forest for days before finally returning to Aspen, hoping to steal a car. Sleep-deprived and in pain, Bundy drove the stolen car so erratically that he caught the attention of police officers who pulled him over. After 6 days on the run, Bundy was back in custody. Though his taste of freedom was brief, it would not be his last. Bundy was stripped of all previous privileges upon returning to Garfield County Jail, but quickly began planning his next escape. Learning from his past failure, he accumulated around $500 over 6 months, most of it smuggled in by his future wife, Carol Ann Boone. He also obtained a floor plan of the jail and a hacksaw from fellow inmates. His cell had an unsecured grate in the ceiling. His plan was to cut around the grate and squeeze through the 1-foot square opening, then navigate the crawl spaces above to a jailer's room. To fit through the small hole, he needed to lose weight. By December 30th, he had lost about 35 pounds and was ready to execute his plan. With most of the prison staff on Christmas break, he piled books on his bed and covered them with blankets to make it appear he was sleeping underneath. He climbed through the grate and crawled to a nearby jailer's room. Once there, he broke through the ceiling and dropped down. The jailer was out for the evening, so he changed into civilian clothes from the jailer's closet and walked out the front door. He was at large once again. It took 17 hours before anyone realized he was missing. By then, he had stolen a car, caught a flight, and taken a bus to Chicago, 100 miles away. 9 days later, he arrived in Tallahassee, Florida. Despite being added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, he remained free until mid-February 1978, a month and a half after his escape. During this time, he killed again. In the early hours of January 15th, he broke into a Florida State University sorority house, where he sexually assaulted, beat, and strangled 2 young women, Margaret Bowman, 21, and Lisa Levy, 20. He also severely injured 2 other women in the house, who survived thanks to a girl returning home whose car headlights scared Bundy off. Police estimated Bundy was in the house for just 15 minutes and carried out the attacks within earshot of over 30 witnesses, none of whom heard anything. Later that night, he attacked another female student, leaving her permanently deaf. On February 8th, he attempted to abduct 14-year-old Leslie Parmenter in a Jacksonville parking lot by posing as a fire department official. He fled when her older brother intervened.
Told me he was Richard Burton from the fire department. He had on a plastic tag. I knew that he wasn't. He fidgeted through his pockets. He had on an overcoat and a suit jacket.
Above all, she says, he seemed nervous, strange. Fortunately, as she was talking to him in the shopping mall parking lot, her big brother Danny arrived, told her to get in his truck immediately.
And I approached the man, and he had already got back in his vehicle and was starting to roll at the window, and I asked him what he wanted with my sister, and he said he was asking her if she was somebody else, and it just seemed real strange.
The next day, in Lake City, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach wasn't so fortunate. She became Bundy's final victim, her body found 7 weeks later in a pig shed 35 miles away.
That evening, Bundy drove an hour west to Lake City, where he stayed at the Holiday Inn for the night. The next morning, he showed up at Lake City Junior High School. He spotted a young girl wearing a T-shirt with the name Leach on the back. It was Kimberly. He apparently told her someone in her family had had an accident and she had to leave. In fact, an eyewitness saw Bundy escorting her off of campus that morning. He commented that they looked like father and daughter. That afternoon, she was reported missing. A couple months later, her body was found about 20 miles west of here in a pig pen.
He was finally caught on February 15th, 1978, after being stopped by police while driving. A license plate check revealed the vehicle was stolen, and when Bundy tried to flee, an officer subdued and arrested him. He reportedly said, "I wish you had killed me." Within 2 years, Bundy was tried and convicted of the murders of the 2 sorority women and the 12-year-old girl. He was executed in the Rayford electric chair at 7:16 a.m. EST on Tuesday, January 24, 1989. His last words to his attorney Jim Coleman and Methodist minister Fred Lawrence were, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends."
Theodore Robert Bundy, do you have a final statement you'd like to make before the sentence of the court is carried out?
Yes. Tell my family I love them. Tell them that.
Hundreds celebrated outside the prison, cheering as the hearse carrying Bundy's body departed. He was cremated in Gainesville, and his ashes were scattered in the Cascade Range of Washington State as per his will.
Ted Bundy, even in death, stirred hatred. An unprecedented crowd of hundreds started gathering before dawn. It took on a macabre circus-like atmosphere.
Following his execution, his brain was removed for scientific study in hopes of uncovering any abnormalities that might explain his violent behavior. Researchers found no such evidence in Bundy's brain, despite some studies linking brain injuries to criminal behavior. This absence of a clear physical cause only amplifies the horror of his legacy of widespread rape, murder, and necrophilia. He epitomizes the invisible psychopath, a person whose outward charm masks a monstrous inner life. Had it not been for a few mistakes driven by his violent impulses and some fortunate breaks for law enforcement, he might have continued living as a charismatic law student by day and a terrifying killer by night. His story has since inspired numerous horror films, true crime books, and documentaries. Decades later, society still grapples with understanding how a seemingly normal, attractive man with a relatively good upbringing could commit such heinous acts. Bundy's legacy is marked by horror and heartbreak. His daring escapes not only demonstrated his cunning, but also exposed significant weaknesses in the criminal justice system at the time. For the families of his victims, the pain inflicted by his actions remains an indelible scar. His story serves as a stark reminder of the evil that can hide behind a charming exterior. His escapes, his heinous crimes, and his eventual execution continue to both fascinate and horrify, representing a dark chapter in American criminal history. While his story is one of brutality and shamelessness, it also highlights the resilience of those who pursue justice. It serves as a continual reminder of the need for vigilance, the importance of supporting victims, and the necessary ongoing improvements in our criminal justice system to prevent such atrocities in the future. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most chilling cases. We encourage you to join the conversation in the comments below. How do you think Bundy's escapes have influenced law enforcement protocols? We look forward to hearing your thoughts.